Hello everyone and welcome to part 2 of the new 5.6b aka pseudo 5.7 Abyss guide. Different to the other video, the part 2 will be mostly focused on recommending a few teams as well as showing you all the results that I've gotten from running a whole lot of different teams against the current Abyss and maybe a few miscellaneous tips along the way. Now let's get started by showing you this image of my tier list for this Abyss. So it took me a while to make all these reactions back then. I've been using it for quite a bit. So let's start off with what will work for both halves. Now, notably, all of the Pyro teams actually work pretty well. Let me just zoom in a little bit here so you guys can see both whether you're running Reverse Vape for the first one with the Pyro highlighted icon or you're running Forward Vape with the Hydro highlighted icon. All of these teams are really great. Of course, we do have Melt and Overloaded. I've been mostly finding success in Overloaded on the first half. Notably, I am running the Veresa variant with Chevrolet, of course, and mine is at C6. However, I do try to remove Mawuika because running Mawuika on the first half is basically a cheat at that point. And surprisingly, I think she can clear quite well. If you were to go to this area, I've made this nice little table right here. I believe Veresa's right about here. I don't remember the exact time, but I think she averaged out on about 1 minute 20 to 1 minute 30 for all 3 chambers. So if you do happen to have Veresa, this should work quite well. Although I'm not sure, I don't think I tested Alakino Overloaded or Cloran Overloaded. I think, yeah, I did calculate Cloran Overloaded, and surprisingly, it actually clears quite well. And it also helps the fact that both Cloran and Chevrolet are both, I believe, Uja aligned characters. So that means their Uja aligned attacks will actually shred the Coppelius shield in one hit. So at the very least, if you do have Overloaded, whether you have C0 or C6, Chevrolet will definitely excel on the first half. Melt is mostly focused on Mawuika, but I did just test Alakino Melt here, and of course with Silali, but you can probably run other units too. Alakino is a strong enough unit to be able to take advantage of this, so definitely works on the first half. For Reverse Vape, I haven't actually tested too much, so I can't really vouch here, but I'm pretty sure if we were to talk about the only real forward vape DPS, I'm sure Molani definitely thrives pretty well here. Granted, she would probably need quite a bit of Pyro application just to deal with the Wayward Hermetic Speaker on Chamber 1 for the first half. And of course, the regular vape is already pretty strong. As long as you have enough Pyro to be able to deal with both the Cryo Shields on Chamber 1 and Chamber 3, you should be just fine. Now, if you were to go a bit more specific on the chamber, for the first half, the 3 elements we have is mostly focused on, I think, what is this again? Aggravate, sorry. Yeah, this is Aggravate, and then we have Monopyro, and of course, what was this last one again? This one is Monogeo. So the thing is, this Abyss does require a hefty amount of DPS, so these elements are not made in consideration of those DPS. Granted, I have tested Noel Triple Geo with Furina, and Noel is not strong enough of a unit to do it, so I wouldn't have any doubt that something like Furina would not be able to do it. Actually, scratch that. I think I'm just going to put this at the bottom, so only 2 different teams can work on the first half, unless you want to count Burning with Emiri or just a random character with the Unfinished Reverie set. Monopyro is going to work well, mostly dealing with Cryo Shield. And then, of course, Spread, well, rather Aggravate. I've tested, I think if I were to look around here, I tested Cloran Aggravate. It did struggle a little bit against Chamber 2. I'm trying to remember what enemies we went into Chamber 2. Oh yeah, Kongamato. Because I think when we run Aggravate, we didn't have anything to deal with the Kongamato brute mechanic. So maybe if you can find some sort of slot, let's say like a Sucrose or a Kazuha to get the self-Pyro infusion, I think that would be really helpful in helping you get the 1 minute 30 second clear. But otherwise, I think Aggravate can definitely work to some extent. And for obvious reasons, I'm not going to put Spread right there. I think I might have tested 1 or 2 teams, but I don't think I tested any more than that. So Cloran is the more neutral variant. You can try all the other different variants of Aggravate. I've seen a few other YouTubers, particularly Rayvon, using the Sethos Aggravate team to be able to clear the first half. So that is one thing you can try, but you can probably run other units as well. Now for the second half is very much a cryocentric theme with a very minor exception. Of course, Freeze is the most ideal to deal with the configuration device as well as the Millennial Pearl Seahorse. Monocryo is not that far different because Frozen, we just pretended like that reaction simply does not exist. And if you guys are feeling a little bit funny, a little bit special today, you can try HyperFridge. HyperFridge is essentially Hyper Bloom, but the 4th unit, instead of running any other element, you simply run Cryo in order to basically kind of like protect the Dendro aura. That's kind of like acting like a fridge preserving your cabbages. This will allow the Dendro Aura to persist even longer, thus allowing you to basically generate more blooms without requiring too much Dendro application, and of course will net you a little bit more hyper blooms. I don't think you actually get more hyper blooms, but it's just easier to maintain the hyper bloom rate. I think the team I tested here, if I look at HyperFridge right now, I tried Nahida Singchu Kuki with a C0 Risley built on DPS. He could actually clear the second half pretty decently, Chamber 1 and Chamber 3. Chamber 2 once again struggles quite a bit. I think for Chamber 2 Seahorse, I think it's much better if you maybe swap to Nahida to try to prioritize breaking the pearl before actually doing all the necessary damage. So you can probably use a mix of Nahida 2 normals into a charge attack, do a dash cancel or a jump cancel, and then pair it together with Hyper Bloom to help break the pearl. If it's possible, that'll be nice. If it's not possible, maybe instead of Ricey, you bring like Rosaria or Kea, or any maybe solid off-field cryo applicator. I don't think I tested any other HyperFridge teams, but this is one of the few samples that I can get. I think I tested the same thing with Ayaka, but I don't really feel like there's that much of a difference. In fact, I feel like Ayaka here would be better because if you use... I think I tested it somewhere. I don't think I put it here. If you use Ayaka's skill, charge attack, as well as the burst, I think she should be able to break the Seahorse shield pretty freaking fast. So that is one thing to keep in mind. And Burning is a team I recently tested, like literally right before I recorded it in this video. It is like 9 p.m. My voice is gone right now. So I tried the Emily Kinish team, and granted, I wanted to not run Mavuika because Mavuika is, despite being in the best team for Kinish, I wanted to give myself a bit of placeholder. So I believe I actually ran Yansan and Kinish. Of course, I'm not using Bennett because I don't want to be tied to Circle Impact. And then I ran Shangling with Favonius instead, regular 4 emblem build, to be able to clear this. And according to my records, he's able to clear the first and the second chamber pretty well. However, the third chamber is a little bit of a struggle, mostly because of the Natlan counter strike gimmick. So for some of you who may not have watched the first video, basically whenever you enter the Knight's Sword Blessing state and of course maintain it over time, the Overseer device will gain 10 points per second, and he has a maximum of 180 points. So once it reaches the maximum points, as indicated by the Natlan looking phlogiston ring around it, which will become more colorful and fill up to the top. Whenever it fills up to the top, it stops doing the laser attacks and proceeds to swap to the Counter Strike mode, where it summons this. It tries to track your location with this Hydro Circle thing, and then once you're actually at the center of the circle, it will immediately initiate like a water pillar attack, which will continue for like about 3 to 4 seconds. Now, miscellaneous strategy here, if you're trying to play around the Counter-Strike mode, try to bait the homing water pillar attack to be outside or away from the Overseer device, because that way that will ensure safety to you as you're running your melee DPS and just having a good time attacking while the water pillar is just chilling somewhere. It does take a few seconds, so make sure that whatever team you're running here does have a pretty good DPS. And of course, like I mentioned in my first part, putting him into the Counter-Strike mode will decrease his resistance from 210% all the way to 50%. So I think the note that I put in my Google Docs is that I think you have to run Deepwood Shangling or something like that, or maybe you run Mavuika, maybe Deepwood Mavuika, because the resistance, I think 50% is still a bit high. So I would reckon if I do this run again with a Deepwood Shangling with enough energy recharge, I think Kinish should be able to do enough damage to potentially get the 1 minute 30 or if not the 2 minute clear. Granted, Coppelius is on the first half, so it might be viable to reach more like 1 minute 15 second clear or 1 minute 30 realistically. So hopefully if you do run Kinish for the second half, make sure you have a really good DPS and of course a bit of fresh threat if you want to reuse the Counter-Strike mode. Now, as for the miscellaneous tips part, there's a few things that I forgot to mention after watching a few other YouTubers on their guide videos. Now, the first thing of all is that Kongamato, all of his attacks are done whenever you are in front of him. So if you want to stall him a bit more for time, you can basically try to go to his side, or even more, try to be at his back at all times, so that whenever he does like any sort of attacks, he will usually have to turn and face you first before he initiates any attack. This will very likely save you quite a good bit of time. I tried this strategy a bit and I've definitely seen its effectiveness, so credits to Ravon for that one once again. Check out his channel, he makes a much more better presented guide video than I do, so I'll leave a link down in the description below. And for miscellaneous tip number 2, whenever you start off the first chamber, first half against the 2 for 3 Cicin mage, if you have any abilities that cause a bit of stagger, generally just try to go to the side and make sure you use one of your abilities to stagger one cryo mage into the other. This should make grouping a bit easier, so that if you run certain abilities like, say for my Alucino Melt team, I basically use Bennett's Burst to try to push one nearer towards the other, which makes it easier for Alucino to hit both of them at the same time. And one thing I forgot, both for the second half of the second chamber and of course against the Overseer device. I mean, honestly, this is a very general tip, you could apply anywhere. So for this case, if you're going against the second half like the Abyss Lecter and of course the Millennial Pearl Seahorse, Elemental Burst or Anemo Elemental Burst that can do absorption is particularly great. Like, let's say Kazuha Burst, if you can position this properly, Venti Burst and Sucrose Burst. And I think to some extent, I think Lynette Burst is also quite decent. These bursts, if you're able to absorb the right element, should help you quite a lot in breaking their respective shields, regardless of whether it's an Electro Shield for the Lecter and the Millennial Pearl Seahorse, or Coppelius in the third chamber, and of course, the Overseer device Cryo gimmick in the final chamber. Otherwise, that is it for this video. I don't have any particular team recommendations, or rather to say, I can't recommend a very specific team because no matter how good all these reactions are, at the end of the day, it really depends on how strong or how well your team is really built in terms of like investment, whether you have C6 of the 4-star characters or like a very well invested high CV 5-star DPS or whatnot, the right supports, all the pieces have to be in place for you to even get 36 stars. I've tried a lot of different 4-star runs and I would salute all of those YouTubers out there that somehow managed to get the 4-star clear. I'm sure it took them a lot of retries, but with that in mind, I do not recommend going for the 36 stars, probably for the past few bits, but I think this is the most strongly I don't recommend kind of vibe because it's just that bad. And I will be making a video about statistically talking about power creep, mostly on the enemy side. So if you guys are interested, hit the subscribe button, stick around for more, and this would probably be my next video after the new game mode comes out. Otherwise, that's it for the video. Hopefully you guys find this helpful. If you find it helpful and enjoyed it a bit, give that like button a little slap. And if you do want to stick around for more endgame guides, contents, and talks, hit that subscribe button. And if you have anything to share, like your clears or whatnot, feel free to comment them in the comment section down below. Otherwise, this is Ethereal signing off, wishing you the best of luck in your future endeavor. Peace out.